Welcome to the deep dive. We've got something pretty fresh today. A newly spotted cybersecurity evasion technique.
That's right. There was an announcement, April 17th, 2025, detailing this discovery.
Okay, so our mission really is to unpack this new threat, figure out what it means for, keeping things secure online.
Definitely. And it's quite an interesting one. Attackers are basically injecting malicious code, specifically obfuscated shellcode,
Right.
into the metadata of encrypted chat applications.
Metadata. Hold on. So not the messages themselves, but the data about the data. Like where.
Exactly. Think about the About Me section in your profile on a chat app or similar fields.
Oh, wow. Places you wouldn't normally think to look for code.
Precisely. Those often overlooked profile metadata sections. They're tucking it away there.
Okay, sneaky. So it's hidden there. But how does it actually, do anything? How's it delivered?
Well, it's not just plain code. It goes through a chain, kind of like disguises.
Yeah.
First, base64 encoding,
Standard stuff.
but then it's XOR encrypted. And on top of that, it's compressed.
So layers, base 64, XOR, compression. That sounds like it would make it harder to spot.
Definitely harder to identify. And that's the key issue here.
Because our usual security tools like network intrusion detection systems, the IDSs, they're probably not digging into profile metadata that deeply.
That's exactly the problem. This stuff is designed to bypass traditional network IDS
How so?
because it's traveling within the encrypted chat traffic. To the network monitoring tools, it just looks like, well, legitimate user profile updates or activity.
Ah, so it blends in with the normal noise inside that encrypted tunnel.
Perfectly. Very, very difficult to detect just by watching network traffic. And they've tested this, apparently, on multiple cross-platform apps.
Which ones does it say?
It mentions apps built using the Electron framework.
Oh, Electron. Right. That powers a lot of popular desktop apps, so the potential impact could be pretty wide.
It could, yeah.
The announcement uses a specific term, a non-inject analysis. What's the significance there? Is this a whole new category?
Well, Anon Inject seems to be the name they're giving this technique. And the analysis highlights a real shift, maybe, in attacker methods.
A shift how?
Traditionally, you might look for attacks targeting executable files, things meant to be run. A non-inject, though, abuses what they call non-executable vectors.
Non-executable vectors,
Yeah.
so like metadata fields.
Yeah.
Things that aren't supposed to run code.
Exactly. Places often overlooked in threat models because, well, they aren't programs. It shows a blind spot, potentially, in how we assess risk.
Exploiting the unexpected corners. Okay. Now, there's also something about a pro tip for red teamers. That sounds interesting.
Yeah, the announcement included that. It shows how this technique could be used offensively.
How would they use it?
The tip suggests using this metadata injection method to hide command and control, or C2 beacon information.
C2 info, like where the malware should phone home to.
Right. Embedding that C2 address or instructions within, say, an About Me section, all encoded and encrypted.
And then how does the infected machine get the instructions?
You'd need a lightweight listener or component already on the target system. Something simple that periodically checks that metadata field, decodes the hidden message, and then acts on it. A covert channel.
Wow. So the C2 instructions are hiding in plain sight, but scrambled. That's clever, in a malicious way.
It is. And the announcement teases that more details are coming tomorrow, apparently, about how they reverse engineered this whole thing.
Ah, okay. Understanding how they figured it out will be key to building defenses, I imagine.
Absolutely. Seeing the reverse engineering process is crucial for defenders.
So let's bring it back for everyone listening. What's the sort of main point, the key takeaway from this deep dive?
I think the core takeaway is this discovery of a new, very stealthy method attackers can use, hiding and delivering malicious code by exploiting metadata fields in encrypted chat apps.
And the big challenge is that it bypasses a lot of traditional security measures.
Exactly. Because it blends in so well with normal encrypted traffic, its detectability is really low. That's the main concern.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? As our communication tools get more complex, more features, more encryption, are we maybe unintentionally just creating more clever hiding spots for attackers?
That's a really good question. It suggests we might need to think beyond just watching the network traffic.
Right. What other proactive steps, maybe looking inside the applications themselves, do individuals and organizations need to consider? Definitely some food for thought there. Thanks for digging into this with us.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. We know you want the crucial info without getting lost in the weeds, and today we've got something pretty significant.
We certainly do.
We're digging into a brand new cybersecurity evasion technique just spotted.
That's right. Yeah, it's fresh from the security research community, found out there in the wild, as they say. A pretty sophisticated method.
Okay, so our mission, as always, is to unpack this, understand the threat, how it works, and really why it matters. So let's get into it. What's the heart of this new technique?
Well, basically, attackers have figured out how to hide malicious code, shellcode, technically inside, get this, the metadata of encrypted chat applications.
Metadata, like...
Yeah, like the About Me section in your profile, that kind of thing.
Wow, okay, the About Me section. That feels really unexpected. How are they managing that?
Well, the delivery is quite clever, actually. They're chaining together a few things. Base64 encoding, then XOR encryption, and also compression.
Okay.
And the result is that the malicious code just looks like, well, total gibberish, random data.
So anyone just glancing at it, even security software maybe, wouldn't see anything wrong. It just looks normal.
Exactly. That's the key. It's hidden in what seems like regular user profile info, so it blends right into the normal traffic of these chat apps, which means your traditional network intrusion detection systems, your IDS, they're likely to miss it completely. It doesn't flag anything.
Right. And we're not talking about some obscure app nobody uses, are we? This could be widespread.
Well, the researchers specifically called out cross-platform apps built on the Electron framework.
Ah, Electron. Okay, lots of apps use that.
Precisely. So yeah, connecting the dots, it means a potentially pretty wide range of popular chat applications could be vulnerable here.
Okay, now the researchers mentioned a term, non-executable vector abuse, something identified by Anon Inject. What did that actually mean for us?
That's a really important point. It signals a significant shift. Security usually focuses quite heavily, actually, on executable files, things like .exe files, stuff that runs directly.
Right, things that do something.
Exactly. But this technique, it cleverly abuses these non-executable areas, like the profile metadata we mentioned. It completely sidesteps a basic assumption that many security systems are built on.
So instead of trying to sneak in a dodgy program, they're hiding the instructions inside what's supposed to be harmless text.
That's a clever, if slightly worrying, evolution.
It is.
The source even had a pro tip for red teamers. What's the practical angle there?
Yes. The pro tip. It basically suggests using this metadata injection method to stash command and control beacons, C2 beacons.
Okay, C2. So establishing communication back to the attacker.
Exactly that. Think of it like setting up a secret phone line back home for the malware. The hidden message, the beacon, gets decoded on the target device, usually by some small, lightweight listener program running quietly in the background. This lets the attacker send commands and control the compromised device remotely, all while staying, under the radar. It's very stealthy. Okay, let's try and summarize this then. What's the absolute key takeaway people should get from this deep dive?
I'd say the main thing is this. Attackers have found a genuinely new, quite sophisticated way to hide malicious code using chat app metadata.
Right.
And the combination of making it look like junk data, the obfuscation, and using this non-executable space, that makes it really, really tough for standard security tools to catch.
And why should everyone listening care about this, even if, the technical bits sound complex?
Well, because understanding how these threats change and evolve is just crucial today for everyone. Even if you're not in cybersecurity, knowing these kinds of advanced hiding tricks exist helps you grasp the potential risks that come with all our online communication tools.
Okay, so here's a final thought to chew on. As we all lean more and more on encrypted apps for privacy, which is generally good, right? Could we maybe unintentionally be creating sort of perfect hiding spots for malicious stuff?
That's a really interesting point.
Yeah, what does this mean for that constant balancing act between privacy and security, especially as those lines just get blurrier and blurrier in our digital lives? Something to think about. Thanks for diving up with us.
You're just browsing online, right? Scrolling through chats, looking at profiles. Seems totally normal.
Everyday stuff.
But what if that everyday stuff, like the little text snippets or profile pics, were actually, hiding threats?
Yeah, that's the worrying part.
Welcome to the deep dive. We look at the latest info and try to figure out what really matters for you.
And some of the things coming out now, like you shared with me, are genuinely Fascinating.
Yeah.
And maybe a bit unsettling.
Right.
It seems the ways attackers are hiding malicious code online are getting seriously creative.
Exactly. You sent over some really eye-opening details, how new methods are using just everyday internet data. Things like, the About Me on a chat
Or
profile,
even profile pictures.
or profile pictures to secretly drop harmful software. So that's our goal today. Let's break down how these techniques actually work,
Figure out why they're a big deal.
why they matter, yeah, and what are the key things for listeners to keep in mind.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay, so let's start with this first one. Injecting code into chat app metadata. What does that even mean?
So researchers recently found a method where malicious code, we often call it shellcode.
Shellcode, right. Like tiny instructions.
Exactly. Very efficient little instructions for a computer. And it's being hidden in the less obvious parts of chat profiles.
Like where specifically?
Specifically those status message fields or the About Me sections, the bits people customize. Turns out they can be secret hiding spots.
That's wild. I mean, who suspects a status update? How did they even find this?
Well, it started when they noticed something a bit weird, some odd activity.
Okay.
In one case, a status message had this extremely long string of what looked like random characters.
Just junk text.
Sort of, but it looked suspiciously like base 64 encoding. That method used to obscure data.
Yeah, it makes things unreadable at a glance.
Right. So that made them dig a bit deeper.
Okay, so they start decoding this base 64 string. What's underneath?
It was actually quite a clever little chain.
Yeah.
Once they decoded the base 64, the result was then scrambled again.
Oh, another layer.
Yeah, using a pretty simple map operation called XOR with a hidden key.
Okay.
And then after that, the data was compressed, like zipping a file.
Yeah.
To make it even smaller.
Right, standard compression.
And the final output, after all that, a tiny piece of adaptable malicious code, only 238 bytes, like a super condensed secret message.
Wow, okay. That's a lot of steps just to hide a tiny bit of code. I mean, how does it do anything? It's just sitting in a profile, isn't it?
That's the other part of the puzzle. It relies on something else.
Okay.
The researchers found it works with a companion browser extension. Those little add-ons for Chrome or Firefox.
Sure.
This specific extension is designed to look for these encoded strings in chat app metadata.
So it's actively scanning profiles?
Seems like it. And when it finds one, it reverses the whole process we just talked about.
Okay, so it decodes the base 64.
Right. Then it does the XOR unscrambling, then it decompresses the data.
And bam, there's the shellcode.
Exactly. Reveals the hidden instructions.
Then what? Does the browser just run it? That seems too easy.
Not automatically, no. It uses a trick. A pretty clever one.
Go on.
The extension uses a browser feature called WebAssembly.memory. It lets code manage memory directly.
Okay.
And then it exploits a vulnerability, sort of a security weakness. It targets a part of the browser usually used for debugging.
Debugging? Like for developers?
Exactly. And it basically tries to shove too much data into a specific memory spot, a buffer overflow.
Ah, buffer overflows. Heard of those.
And that overflow lets the hidden shellcode get written into memory in a way that allows it to execute, to take control.
So it's a two-stage thing. Stage one, hide the code somewhere innocuous. Stage two, have a separate tool, the extension, find it, unlock it, and then use a browser flaw to run it.
Precisely.
The notes you shared called something the Anon Inject takeaway. What's the big picture insight from this method?
Well, what's really significant is this combination. You've got the covert delivery.
Right, hidden in plain sight.
The deferred execution, it does nothing until found.
Okay.
And multiple layers of obfuscation, scrambling it up. The takeaway is that social platforms, chat apps, they're becoming new drop zones.
Drop zones, like for malware delivery.
Exactly. We're moving beyond just clicking bad email attachments or downloading dodgy.exe files.
That feels like a really important shift. And you mentioned it's hard to spot this. Why is that?
Well, think about it. It just looks like normal activity, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Someone typing a slightly long status.
Yeah.
It doesn't trigger alarms.
Yeah, true.
Traditional security, like antivirus, is often looking for suspicious files or weird web addresses, not just text in a profile field, so it can easily slip through.
Right, it blends in. And there was that pro tip for lead teamers, too. What was that about, using it for C2?
Yeah, C2, command and control. The researchers pointed out this can be really useful for that.
So?
Instead of, like, a compromised computer constantly talking back to a server, which can be detected.
Right, noisy traffic.
An attacker could hide encrypted commands inside, say, different user profiles.
Yeah.
A small, hidden listener on the target machine could just check these profiles occasionally.
Oh, wow.
It would decode the instructions and run them. It's a much quieter, stealthier way to maintain control.
Super stealthy. Okay, so that's hiding code in text, in metadata. Now let's shift to the second technique you brought up, hiding shellcode in profile pictures, using steganography.
Right, steganography.
For anyone listening who hasn't bumped into that term, what is steganography, basically?
It's essentially the art, or maybe science, of hiding information within other information in plain sight.
Hiding in plain sight. Okay.
So in this case, hiding malicious code inside the actual data of an image file, like a PNG or a JPEG.
Not just attached to it, but inside it.
Inside the pixel data itself. The goal is to change the image data so slightly that, the human eye can't see the difference.
Right.
And often, security software doesn't spot it either. Think of it like invisible ink on a normal letter.
Okay, cool analogy. So how do they actually jam code into a picture's pixels?
Usually it involves messing with the least significant bits, the LSBs.
LSBs, least significant bits. Okay.
Yeah. Every pixel has color data, right? Red, green, blue values. Each value is made of bits, tiny on-off switches.
Uh-huh.
By tweaking just the very last bit, the least significant one for each color component and lots of pixels, you can embed data.
Without changing the color noticeably.
Exactly. It makes a tiny, almost imperceptible change. So for this technique, the shellcode first gets scrambled, maybe with that XOR method again.
Right.
And then a special tool injects this scrambled code into those LSBs across the image.
Okay, got it. So you've got this infected image. Maybe it's someone's profile pic on a forum or, I don't know, LinkedIn.
Yeah, anywhere you upload an avatar or profile picture.
How does the code get out again and actually run?
Similar concept to the metadata one, actually. The delivery is just uploading the picture.
Simple enough.
Then, when someone views that profile, maybe loads that image, another malicious component comes into play.
Like another browser extension? Or maybe some script already on the page?
Could be either, yeah. This component scrapes the image data. It knows how to look at those LSBs.
Finds the hidden pattern.
Finds the pattern, extracts the scrambled code, unscrambles it.
And injects it into the browser's memory, using things like WebAssembly again.
Exactly. WebAssembly, or sometimes exploiting how browsers handle things like array buffers when processing image data. There are different ways to get it into executable memory.
That is. Wow, pretty sneaky. You mentioned this was actually seen in the wild. Something about an underground job board?
Yeah, a small campaign was spotted. On this underground job site, the user avatars, the little profile pics, they were actually carrying malicious payloads hidden inside them.
Seriously? What were they targeting?
The code seemed designed to go after flaws in older versions of Chromium-based browsers, like older Chrome or Edge.
Interesting. And again, the Anon Inject notes said this is tough for standard security to catch. Same reason as before.
Pretty much, yeah. Your typical antivirus or EDR, endpoint detection and response. They're mostly looking for known bad files, like executables or specific network patterns.
Right.
This payload isn't in a format they usually scan closely. It only really becomes active, potentially detectable, after it's been pulled out of the image and decoded right there in the user's browser.
So until that moment, it just looks like a perfectly normal picture file.
Exactly, which is why it often sails right past defenses.
And just like the metadata trick, this seems great for attackers wanting to keep a low profile, right? Hard to trace back.
Absolutely. It provides a way to drop payloads using public trusted platforms without needing to host malicious files on easily traceable attacker infrastructure. Very non-attributable.
Okay, so let's zoom out a bit. We've looked at hiding code in profile text, hiding it in images. Are there common threads here? Bigger picture implications?
Definitely. I think the biggest thing is this clear move away from relying solely on traditional executable files for malware delivery.
Yeah, that seems key.
Both techniques misuse these, well, seemingly harmless data types, text metadata, image data, to smuggle in the real payload.
And they both rely on that second stage, right? Something on the client side in the browser to actually extract and run the code.
Crucially, yes. The delivery is passive, the execution happens later, triggered locally.
Which, as we've said, makes it much harder for traditional security to see coming.
Considerably harder. They're just not typically configured to deeply inspect the content of every status update or decode every image pixel, looking for hidden code logic.
They're looking for bad files, not bad pixels or bad sentences, essentially.
That's a good way to put it. Signature-based detection fails. Even some behavior analysis might miss it until the code is actually running in memory.
Which could be too late.
Could easily be too late.
Yeah.
It really highlights, I think, the need for security that understands context better, how web apps and extensions should behave, not just looking at file types.
This is exactly the kind of cutting-edge insight our listeners tune in for. Getting that clear, efficient understanding of what's new and what matters in cybersecurity. It's definitely eye-opening stuff.
It is.
Yeah.
And it's, constant reminder. It's always a cat and mouse game in security. Defenses improve in one area.
Attackers find a new angle.
Always looking for those unexpected ways in.
So let's wrap this up. What are the main things folks should take away from this deep dive today?
I'd say three things, really. First, just the sheer ingenuity here, the creativity in finding new hiding spots.
Right.
Second, this clear trend. Attackers are shifting towards non-executable vectors, using data files, not program files.
Okay.
And third, the vital importance of thinking about threats beyond just .exe files or weird links. We need awareness that, well, almost any online data could potentially hide something.
Seemingly normal stuff isn't always normal. Okay, and building on that, here's a final thought for everyone listening. Think about how much data we all share online. Every day, status updates, profile info, photos, comments.
It's a huge amount.
Given what we've just discussed, what other seemingly innocent fields, what other file types might also be vulnerable? Could your bio, your location data, even a sound file be next? Something to mull over.
That's a great point. And it's worth remembering, this deep dive, we've only really scratched the surface with these two techniques.
Just a couple of examples.
There are likely others out there, and more being developed. The landscape is always shifting. Always new surprises.
Constantly evolving. Well, thanks for breaking that down, and thanks everyone for joining us for this deep dive. Stay curious, stay informed.
And stay safe online.
We'll catch you next time.
Everyone wants to stay informed, right? But wading through endless technical details, not so much fun.
Definitely. Information overload is real.
So that's what we're doing today. We've gone through some really interesting new research findings from security folks.
Yeah, focusing on some pretty clever, maybe slightly worrying techniques attackers are using now.
We're talking about hiding malicious code, but like really hiding it in places you might not expect.
Think of this as your quick guide to a big shift in how threats are operating, hiding in plain sight, essentially.
And then this isn't just theory. We're looking at stuff researchers are actively finding, sharing, even building proof of concepts for.
Right. Real-world examples.
So our mission, let's say, is to really get how these hidden attacks work, why they actually matter to you, and, boil it down to the key takeaways. No PhD required.
Exactly. Let's start with steganography. Fancy name, maybe you've heard it.
Steganography. Sounds a bit spy novel-ish.
It kind of is. It's the art of hiding something within something else that looks totally normal. And in cyber attacks, something else is often, well, an image file.
Okay, wait, an image file, like a JPEG or a PNG. How do you hide malicious shellcode, right, inside a picture?
Yeah, shellcode. So the trick is in the pixels. Every digital image is just tons of pixels, and each pixel has color data represented by bits, ones and zeros.
Right.
Steganography often messes with the least important ones, the least significant bits, or LSBs. Think of it like you have a number for a color shade, say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, changing that last 5 to a 4.
You probably never noticed the difference in the picture.
Exactly. Visually, it's imperceptible. But you can use that tiny change across many pixels to encode data, like malicious shellcode.
Wow.
It's embedded, hidden until something knows how to look for it and decode it. And the scary part, you might see or share these images daily. It's not just about dodgy links anymore.
So like a hidden message baked right into the picture itself, what's the typical way this actually, causes damage then?
Okay, so the workflow usually goes something like this. Attackers take their shellcode, maybe scramble it up first. XOR encoding is one method they use just to make it less obvious.
Okay.
Then they use a tool to embed that into the LSBs of, say, a PNG image.
And this image could end up anywhere.
Pretty much. We're seeing them used as profile pictures on forums, chat apps, even job boards sometimes. Think of it like invisible ink again. The message is there, but you need the developer fluid.
But a profile picture, that's, yeah, definitely unexpected.
Exactly. That surprise factor is key. Then, on the victim's end, you need something else. maybe a malicious browser extension or some script running on a website.
Ah, okay. The image isn't doing the attacking itself.
Right, it's the carrier. This other piece of code, the extension or whatever, it knows to scan the image, read those subtle LSB changes, pull out the hidden shellcode,
And run it.
and run it.
Yeah.
Researchers mention using things like WebAssembly for speed in the browser or exploiting how memory is handled, like array buffers, to execute it right there in memory.
So delivery vehicle plus an activation mechanism.
Precisely. And it's not just theoretical. There was a small campaign found on an underground job board using avatars like this, targeting older browsers specifically.
Mm.
And the big advantage for attackers, your standard antivirus, your EDR, they often just see an image file, not executable code hidden inside pixels. It sails right past.
Yeah, that bypass is huge. So you mentioned red teamers find this useful too. Why them?
Right, red teams are the good guys simulating bad guys, testing defenses. For them, this is great. They can drop these image payloads onto public sites, like a forum.
Ah, so it's hard to trace back to them. Non-attributable delivery.
Exactly. Much stealthier than sending a direct file.
And it sounds like this is getting serious attention with the proof of concept coming out.
Yeah, a POSI release is significant. It means they're sharing the how-to, step-by-step instructions, maybe even code, showing how to create these images, how to make them work in a test setup.
So other security pros can learn, build defenses.
Precisely. Understand the threat, detect it, prevent it, educate everyone.
Okay, so that's hiding things in the picture itself. But you also looked at another method involving metadata. What is metadata, simply put?
Think of it like the label on a file. Data about the data. File name, creation date, size, that kind of stuff.
Right.
But it can also be other, less obvious fields attached to digital content.
Hmm.
And yeah, attackers are stuffing malicious code in there now too, like sneaking something extra onto that label.
And where did this particular technique pop up? Chat apps, you said.
Yeah, the first clue was weirdly long text in someone's status message field on a chat profile. Just a huge string of base 64 characters. Red flag right there.
So they grabbed that string and took it apart in the lab.
Yep. And it was like peeling an onion.
Hmm.
First, decode the base 64. That revealed something else that was scrambled using XOR encryption with a static key.
Another layer.
Right, decrypt that. And then it turned out it was also compressed using gzip. And after all that unwrapping, what was left? A tiny piece of malicious code. A 238-byte polymorphic shellcode. Polymorphic meaning it can change itself slightly each time, making it harder to spot.
That's a serious amount of hiding.
Hmm.
But again, just having it there in the status message doesn't do anything right.
Yeah.
How did it run?
Good question.
Yeah.
And similar theme to the images. The chat app itself didn't want it. It needed, again, likely a malicious browser extension.
The extension again?
Seems to be a common factor. This extension was looking for these encoded blobs in the metadata, found it, decoded it all,
Dan.
and then wrote the shellcode into the browser's memory at runtime. They specifically mentioned using WebAssembly.memory again, and also exploiting a bug or a buffer overflow in some kind of exposed debug feature that let the code execute.
So even if the chat app is secure, a bad browser extension could still be the weak link.
Potentially, yes. It's that interaction. The payload is hidden in one place metadata this time, like in an About Me section of an encrypted chat app. And the trigger exploits something else, often in the browser environment. And this metadata injection, super hard to spot. It just looks like profile updates, blends right in with normal traffic, network intrusion detection systems. I might miss it entirely.
Because they're looking at the main traffic, not necessarily profile metadata fields.
Exactly.
And they tested this on Electron apps. Why is that important?
Electron. It's a framework loads of apps use to build desktop software with web tech. Think Slack, Discord, WhatsApp desktop. Lots of them.
Okay.
So if you find a way to exploit how Electron handles something, or a common library used in Electron apps, that technique might work across many different applications. Much wider impact.
Makes sense. The research note called this the Anon Inject takeaway, highlighting abuse of non-executable vectors. What does that mean for, regular folks?
It means attackers are shifting tactics. Instead of trying to trick you into running an obvious program file like a .exe, they're hiding the bad instructions inside things that aren't programs, like an image file, or like text in a status update. Your computer doesn't see these as immediate threats because they're not supposed to run.
They're just data.
Yeah.
Until something else makes them run.
Precisely. That's the non-executable vector idea. It makes detection much harder for traditional security tools focused on scanning actual program files.
Got it. And there was another tip for red teamers. Command and control beacon stashing. Sounds ominous.
Yeah. C2, or command and control, is how attackers talk to machines they've already infected. Give commands, get data back.
Okay.
So, by hiding a tiny beacon, a piece of code that calls home inside metadata, they can create this hidden communication channel. The beacon just sits there, encoded, until the infected machine decodes it and contacts the attacker. Very stealthy way to maintain control.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds incredibly difficult to find.
It really is.
And they're releasing a Python script to scan for this stuff. That's good news, right?
Absolutely. Sharing tools like that is key. It lets security teams check exported chat logs or profile data for these kinds of hidden encoded strings, a way to proactively hunt for this specific threat.
Okay, so pulling it all together,
Yep.
steganography in images, metadata injection in chat apps.
hmm
What's the big takeaway here?
I think the main point is attackers aren't just sticking to the old methods. They're getting creative about where they hide code, non-traditional places.
Yes.
Social media, chat platforms, these are becoming potentially drop zones for malware delivery, not just communication tools. Our idea of what constitutes a threat needs to broaden.
We need to think beyond just email attachments and dodgy downloads.
Definitely. And it really highlights client-side security, what's happening in your browser, the risks from rogue extensions or vulnerabilities and things like WebAssembly that execute code local. That's becoming a major battleground.
So to wrap up, we've really unpacked two pretty sophisticated techniques today. Hiding code in images steganography and injecting it into file or profile metadata, especially in chat apps.
Right. Both relying on hiding the payload really well and often needing a separate trigger, like a malicious extension, to actually execute it and bypass normal defenses.
Hopefully everyone listening now has a clearer picture of how these attacks work and why they're a significant evolution in the threat landscape.
Yeah, it's definitely something to be aware of.
It really makes you think differently, doesn't it? I mean, as everything gets more connected, the potential hiding spots just multiply, and attackers are clearly getting more imaginative. It leaves you wondering, where else could malicious code be lurking that we haven't even thought of yet?
Hmm. That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It really underscores that this is always evolving. Staying informed, staying curious, it's just essential in cybersecurity today.